Knon 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
To Lambda Weekly. It's not coming through. Good morning, and it is still not coming through.
No, I am.
You are.
So I'll just say it.
Okay.
Good. Is it morning or no? Good afternoon?
Good afternoon, and there I come.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
Now I'm too loud.
Yeah.
I'm back here. And
okay. Good afternoon.
This new setup is. Welcome to Lambda Weekly. Before we even start, we need a volunteer to help Doc at the beginning of the show. Last few shows we've started, they've been rough. That's because we have to reset everything up to do the talk show that we didn't have to do when we were on Saturday morning. So if you would like to be a regular volunteer here on Lambda Weekly, go to our Facebook page, send us a note. I'm going to put a note on our Facebook page today to remind people we are looking for a volunteer for Sunday afternoons. Good morning or afternoon. And see, I'm several years we were morning. Now we're back to afternoon. And welcome to Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet. I'm here in the studio with Lerone Landis. The late Patti Fink has the week off. She will be.
She should be back next week.
Yeah, she should be here by 5 after 1 next weekend. And our guest today is Gretchen Manus. Good afternoon, Gretchen.
Good afternoon.
And welcome.
Thank you.
Gretchen has a master's in human development and family studies and one in counseling with a specialty in play therapy. Lerone likes to play, so we decided to have you come and talk.
And I need a lot of counseling, apparently.
Apparently you do. Lerone has been off the last 2 weeks because he's been going to classes preparing to foster to adopt, possibly. You're considering it. One of the ways you consider it is to go to these classes and find out about fostering to adopt. So, Gretchen, you've seen this before.
I have.
Because you're working mostly with kids. Off the top of your head, what's some advice you have from Lerone to start for Lerone and Danny?
Well, I think that you guys clearly are interested in adding to your family, and it seems like you're really determined. And I think my biggest piece of advice is really just to follow your heart and follow your gut instinct on things, because that's really what's most important to a parent, is just to follow your gut.
Yeah.
Okay, now Lerone and Danny, for people listening who don't know, they had a child she's going to be 5 years old.
In about 2 weeks.
They did a...
surrogacy.
Surrogacy, thank you. I had that word just outside the door when we were talking. They had Gabrielle through a surrogate 5 years ago, and it was really a very easy surrogacy.
It really was. The process, it couldn't have been smoother, and it happened really quick, much to our surprise, and here we are.
Yeah, the surrogate got pregnant first time. She had a very smooth pregnancy. She gave birth right on a couple of days early from the due date, and that was easy. It was just so easy, and Gabrielle's been healthy and become a big loudmouth just like her dad's. But
very true.
This time you decided, rather than go through a surrogate, to possibly, you'd rather just adopt.
We both rather to adopt. And part of the problem, well, it's not a problem. We don't really want to go through a surrogacy again. because we just want them to be potty trained already. No, babies are work. I loved my baby, but they are work. Infants are work.
Absolutely.
Now that you're old.
Yes, I mean, so we're like, you know what? We got it out of our system. Let's not do that again. Let's go ahead and get like a 2-year-old to about a 5-year-old.
Now, what advice do you have for him on that? Gabrielle's going to be 5. Better that they adopt somebody younger.
Yes. It would be my recommendation that you adopt a younger child. That way your child's position in the family, Gabrielle's position, remains the same, and that's unchanged for her.
Right.
So that's really important.
Why is that so important?
Because it can be confusing as she gets older and she kind of looks at her identity and her identity within the family, and she is confused about, well, why was I once the oldest child and now I'm not?
Right.
Okay,
Makes
so
sense.
In bringing a child into the family this way, and you're talking about adopting, but probably you'll do foster to adopt.
Possibly. Mm-hmm.
Explain that whole process. What is it?
Unless you're going to go through, this is kind of a misnomer for a lot of people out there who have never adopted or been involved in the adoption process. If you want to just go adopt a child or a baby, you have to go through a private agency. That's the only way you're going to get right away. You get the kid. Otherwise, you're going through,
And there's big cost.
and there's a lot of cost involved. I mean, a lot. Otherwise, if you go directly through the state or an organization like what we're going through that works with the state, you have to go through foster to adopt. And the main goal, they will tell you straight up, the main goal for fostering is reintroduction, meaning they're trying to give the parents, because something happened, it's a wide range of issues, but there's some reason why they don't have their children anymore. So the main goal is to reintroduce those children into back with their parents.
And number 2 goal is with a relative.
Or with a relative, absolutely. So, and the third goal, if none of those 2 work out and the parents actually end up losing or having their rights terminated, their parental rights terminated, then you can start talking about adoption.
Now, one good thing in Texas is Texas doesn't give parents unlimited amount of time. They give them like 6 months to get their stuff together, and then they start losing. There are some states where this can go on for years.
Absolutely.
And it really screws with the kid. Okay, so you've seen some of this, Gretchen. Tell him what to expect in a kid that's just been taken out of his home, possibly because of abuse or drugs or neglect, or these aren't kids that just well, it's a good kid, but we don't think you're good with your parents, so we'll take them out of the home. I mean, they've been probably forcibly removed from the home for some reason.
Absolutely. I would say pay attention to their behavior, because their acting out behaviors are trying to tell you something. They're trying to communicate to you what their need is. And children and even teens don't really have the language skills. They don't really have the cognitive abilities to always ask for what they need. And so the way that it comes out is it comes out in behaviors. And so such as if it's a younger child, maybe they were potty trained and now they are not. Right. Or maybe they're having nightmares, or maybe they're having issues in school, depending on the age of the child. That's something I see a lot of. And sometimes I'll see children who specifically have issues just at home or just at school. And that tells you a lot as well, because we have to pay attention to the environment that the child is in when these behaviors are happening. And one thing I tell parents a lot is, parents will say things like, well, my child only acts out with me, but not at school. And my advice to them and my recommendation is that is a good thing. Your child feels safe enough with you to act out with you. So that's a good thing. They're trying to give you a message. And so really paying attention to what that might mean.
What are they usually looking for, do you think? I mean, it's going to be a whole range of things.
Sure, absolutely. A lot of times it's just, I need to be heard. I need to be validated. I need to be understood. And that's something that parents, I think they they miss, and it's very easy to miss, because we're so focused on, I want my child to be well educated. I want my child to be a good athlete. I want my child to be a great piano player. All these things that we want for our children, but we forget some of the most important things, which is my child just wants to be validated for who they are.
So number one thing is, are you giving your kid enough attention?
Absolutely.
And attention, by that I don't mean, are you sending him to soccer on Monday, piano on Tuesday, language lessons on Wednesday? I mean,
Absolutely.
just personal attention.
What is the time, the quality time that you have with your child one-on-one? What does that relationship look like?
So, what are some of the things that, and we're just jumping around here, okay, so they're thinking of bringing a child into the house. How do they prepare a 5-year-old for bringing a child into the house?
Well, the first thing I would say is you want to be honest in whatever you say to your child, no matter what age they are. But also children are smart, they're intuitive, and if you're not being completely honest with a child, they know it and they don't understand why. And because of where they are developmentally, especially at age 5, they are going to think it's something that they have done, they have said, they have not done. They are going to think it's their fault. And so we call that egocentrism, and it's something that happens developmentally around that preschool age. And so you want to be careful of that whatever you say, that you're very honest and you're very direct, that you use just as few words as possible, that you're very concise, but that you say what you want to say.
Like what? What are some of the things that they should tell Gabrielle?
Some of the things that you might tell her would be things like, we have a new child coming to live with us. I don't know how long. At this point, you'll probably know if it's a boy or a girl, and you'll say, I don't know how long he or she will be here, because that's the honest answer. You probably don't know that.
I've seen a couple of
Very
cases.
true.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of cases where somebody was prepared that there are issues at this kid's home. The kid was taken out of the home and is not even in the same city just for safety. You're going to have him for at least 6 months, which is the normal period of that we do. And 2 weeks later, the kid was back with his family. So you really don't know.
You don't know.
Absolutely.
You really don't know. Yeah. Okay, so he needs to prepare her by being honest and saying, we have a child coming into the house for, we don't know how long.
You
Could
don't
be
know
just
how
a couple of
long.
weeks. Could be several months. Could be longer than that.
And this is really going to be our time to get to know this new child. And you really want your child, your Gabrielle, to feel like she has a voice. So, this is your time to bond with this new child and to really see what kind of connection you have with this child.
Now, you were talking about, and which I totally agree, because I've already experienced it on various topics, about having short and concise answers for your child. Because for those who don't have children, they always, when you tell them one answer, the response is always another question.
Absolutely.
And the more detailed of an answer you give, the more questions you're going to get after that. It's not just to like, oh, okay, Daddy, and walk away. No, they are question boxes.
Yeah.
I mean,
But that's
And that's a
sign
good
of-
thing.
good. It's
Yeah,
good.
They're
It's a sign of a
curious.
smart kid.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
What happens if they bring a child into the house? With the foster system, you don't have time to sometimes to prepare and whatever, because through some agencies it's an emergency shelter and they need to get the kid into a foster home within a day or two.
Yeah.
So
And sometimes it's like 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's how
it's
foster works.
usually at 2 or 3 in the morning, because that's when the domestic violence happens, that kids are yanked out of their home or other things happen. So they know just suddenly we have a child coming into the house. But they'll know, okay, we've put our name in, we're just waiting, so it'll probably be over the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because it's a huge need for foster parents.
Yeah.
And we're
There
not
is.
discussing this to discourage anybody.
Absolutely.
We're discussing this to encourage people, but understand what you need to know. Okay, so what happens when Gabrielle suddenly, she's all prepared for it, she's excited, and then all of a sudden, sharing daddies is just not what she thought it was going to be, because this kid came into the house a little bit scared, a little bit acting out, a little bit, not exactly, not the perfect child that she is.
I love that.
Well, but she thinks she is.
She thinks she is. Well, I mean, I don't know what the best answer is, but part of that is just biological siblings that have been raised in the same household go through the same thing. You know, little brother or little sister's getting more attention than I am. Why? They might start to act out because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So.
Not that Gabrielle would ever do that.
Not that she would ever do that. But yeah, that happens. I think that's just part of everyday sibling rivalry.
Yeah, and I think that's where your relationship with her is going to be really important, because it's going to be an opportunity for you to open up the conversation with her about, I know things have kind of been different since this new kid has been with us, and I know that we might not spend a lot of time together like we used to. That's saying, I'm with you and I'm feeling what you're feeling and I understand. And that's validating her. And no matter what age kids are, they need that.
Yeah.
We need that as adults. That's why people come to counseling.
But the first time she sees Lerone actually picking up and hugging another child, she might be all prepared for it. She might even enjoy playing with this child. But all of a sudden, Daddy is hugging this other child and not me. What do you do about that?
I think you really just have to communicate with her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if this would make a difference or not, but we have a big family. You know, Danny is a big family.
Mm-hmm.
And so every 2 or 3 years...
And most of them are gay.
Oh, a lot of them are. Every 2 or 3 years, there's a new baby in the family. Gabrielle hasn't been the youngest for quite a while now. There's another new baby born just this summer. So she's constantly around other little children, and of course we pick them up and hug them. And what I do is I bring her with me. I grab her, and we all hug together.
That's fantastic.
And you know, and she loves baby. She wants to touch the baby, and like, okay, well, come, we can do it together. So I mean,
yeah.
so
I think that is helping your relationship with her. And introducing her to new children.
Right.
And to the idea that we might have one of those too.
Absolutely.
Right.
Okay. So what happens, though, if this child really is, I mean, it's a kid that was probably abused in some way. They don't just take kids out of their houses.
Exactly. There's a reason why they're not at home anymore.
And a kid that was abused could be, on the one hand, so relieved that they're in a safe home and in a home where they're getting love. On the other hand, they might not know how to handle that.
Right. They don't know how to receive that because they've maybe never experienced it.
Right.
And so then that they could act out because they don't understand how to deal with the emotions that they're feeling. Maybe they've, in order to cope with being in that stressful, abusive, chaotic environment, they've kind of pushed their feelings aside. So now they don't know how to cope with any feelings, and they don't know how to accept love.
Right.
We need to take a break. We're talking about, well, we're trying to scare Lerone out of ever adopting or fostering a child.
Hey, you're doing a good job. Danny, we need to talk.
All of the worst situations that could possibly happen. We'll be back with more Lambda Weekly right after this.
Don't be a Scrooge. Give the blues to the music lover on your list. Knon has the perfect CD or LP for you. Texas Blues Radio Volume 5. Texas Blues Radio Volume 5 features acoustic blues, instrumental blues, party songs, somebody done somebody wrong songs, baby got a good thing songs, six-pack and devil's back songs, gumbo, jive, T-bone, and hip-shaking songs from a fine selection of great Texas blues artists. So do right by the blues and give some Texas blues this year. Texas Blues Radio Volume 5 CD is available at knon.org. Forever Young Records in Grand Prairie and in Dallas at Bill's Records. Vinyl copies are at Forever Young Records for that vinyl fan on your list. Downloads are available at cdbaby.com. All proceeds are a gift to KNON.
The Dallas Volunteer Attorney Program, a joint initiative of the Dallas Bar Association and Legal Aid of Northwest Texas. It is an organization dedicated to increasing and enhancing pro bono legal services to the poor in Dallas through the recruitment, training, and support of volunteer attorneys. DVAP offers numerous legal clinics for Dallas County residents. For more information, dallasbar.org/DVAP.
Hi, this is Patti Fink, and you're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM.
And welcome back to Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet. I'm here in the studio with not the late Patti Fink. She'll be back with us next week. I'm here with Lerone Landis, and our guest today is Gretchen Manus. She's a counselor, specializes in play therapy with children. Lerone, you had a question. We've been talking about, Lerone and Danny are thinking of fostering or fostering to adopt.
Yes.
And you had some
going through the
questions.
classes, you learn you learn so much. And
talk about these classes for just a second. Just we keep referring to them without having said what they are.
Oh, they're different. Some of them are CPR classes. Some of them are classes about abuse. A lot of them are about one of the classes is just about the whole process, just to tell you this is the way it is as opposed to what you thought.
It's like 40 hours of classes that you have to do?
I haven't really looked at the hours, but it's about like that.
Yeah.
It's about like that. It's probably going to take us, because of our schedule, it's probably about 3 months to get them all out. But anyway, one of the things you have to agree on, and I don't know if this is with all adoption agencies, but the one that we're working with, and I know a couple of other friends who've had other agencies, and they said the same thing with them. You have to sign an agreement that you will not use corporal punishment, i.e. spanking, on your foster children or even once the adoption is finalized. Now, Danny and I are not that we're big proponents of spanking, but we don't rule it out either. It's just like, whatever works outside of abuse. Some kids, you can just give a good look to. That'll get them straightened up. Some you might have to raise your voice to. Some you can put in the corner. Some you can take away their toys. Some you might have to swat on the butt, to get their attention. As a counselor, what are your thoughts about discipline in general and specifically corporal punishment?
Well, I want to go back to something I said earlier, which is that all behavior has a purpose. And if we understand that as adults, then we have to understand that that's happening with children too. So whatever their misbehavior is, what we see as their misbehavior, it has a purpose. And so I don't agree with corporal punishment because I don't like the message that it conveys. It conveys the message that when you can't think of another way to get what you need, be aggressive. Hit. That's the underlying message there. And we want to give our children a voice so that they can speak and they can say what their needs are so that they don't have to act out physically.
Gotcha.
Now, I get the reason that they don't, that they want you to sign a contract when you're a foster parent, because that what Lerone is calling a little swat, and he means as a little swat, that child remembers being a fierce, physical, abusive beating that might have even ended up in the hospital for.
And you're right, and I get that.
So I mean, that's the reason behind it. So you have to be real careful with these kids who've been so damaged.
Absolutely, because even a little swat could bring back the memories and their psyche at the time of being abused.
Suddenly they don't feel safe with you anymore.
Right.
And that's the most important thing. Their relationship with you is based on that they feel safe with you.
Mm-hmm. And that's, it's funny because with your own daughter, it's different. Of course, she has to feel safe, but nurtured and all these other things. But with a foster kid, the first thing is feeling safe.
Absolutely.
Because they weren't.
Right.
They just really weren't.
Right.
I've been out to Jonathan's place, which is another, it's an agency, it's an emergency shelter for kids who are removed from their homes. It's out in like Mesquite, Garland area. And they have a home for like 13 to 17-year-old girls. These are kids who dropped out of the foster system because they were abused, not just in their own homes. And when I say abused, they've all been pregnant, they've been on drugs, they've been physically abused at home, but then it happened again in the foster system. Mm-hmm. And these are kids who they just can't even put out into foster homes again. And when you meet these girls, they're just young 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And to really think about these horrible things having happened to them, it just tears your heart out. But they also have an emergency shelter for kids who've been taken out of their homes, and that would be a likely source of a foster kid for you. So something happened at home, and the kid goes into, they call you, it's 3 in the morning, or, maybe you pick the kid up at 8 the next morning, they stay there overnight. But the important thing for those kids is just to be safe. And I was going somewhere with this. I lost complete track.
I think where you were going with this was the safety piece.
Yeah.
And, as for us as humans, when we are in the infancy stage of life, that's when we really develop our trust for the world. Like, we cry when we're hungry, or we need our diaper changed. And if someone responds to that, then that tells us that the world is a safe place. The world is a good place. And we call that attachment theory. And basically, if that doesn't happen in infancy, and often it doesn't with these kids who are in the foster system, then it can happen at any point in time. So you have the opportunity to create that trusting relationship with the child when that child comes into your home. Mm-hmm. And at the basis of that is the world is safe.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to one of the reasons that we were talking about your coming on the show, mm-hmm. even before Lerone started his fostering classes, was not just kids need to be safe, but kids are often struggling with their identities.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so you've seen kids who are struggling with their identities, parents who are like overachievers even, mm-hmm. who they just have to be so busy with things, but they're not letting the kid be who he is, and the kid doesn't feel like he can be who he is.
And by identity, you're not just limiting it to their sexual orientation.
No,
Absolutely.
A whole bunch of things, but that is one of the things.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and that's actually the main reason I was talking with David about coming on the show, because I have, in private practice, I see a lot of kids who have additional pressure on them to be something, to produce something with schoolwork, with their involvement in sports and extracurricular activities. And I am concerned that that is actually doing more harm than it is good in the long run. And I'm especially concerned with children and teens who are struggling with their sexual identity in the LGBTQ community, and really what that means for them. Because the overall idea with parents is kind of like the message they're giving their kids is, I don't accept you as you are. You must produce something. You must be something to be accepted, to be loved. And we have to be really careful about that with kids, especially with kids struggling with their sexual identity. Mm-hmm. We want to give them the message that you are accepted and you are loved as you are right here.
Mm-hmm. Well, like Lerone always wanted to play with dolls as a kid, and his parents wanted him to be playing football.
Not far from the truth.
Absolutely.
And who was it who I was talking to recently? And she said, she's lesbian, and she said, I always thought dolls were creepy. Was that Candy?
No, I think Erin thought dolls were creepy, and I think she chopped their hair off.
Right.
Yeah, that's the story we got.
Give them a little butch haircut.
Right.
Why not? But that's the kind of thing that when a kid is just not doing all the things that you expect of them.
I think.
You hit your mic or something.
Yeah, you went off. There you go.
Am I on now?
Now you're on.
Okay.
Now you're on.
When a kid is not doing what their parents expect of them,
Yeah,
are you still going to accept them?
absolutely.
And we also talked about the word accepting.
Accepting. But you just hit on something that I don't know if you want to elaborate on this, but when we were waiting for Gabrielle to be born, we had no expectations. We really did not, other than we were hopeful that she's healthy. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not going to lie. It's kind of actually a cute story, I think, but we really wanted a boy. We really wanted a boy, but we didn't get that, and that's okay. We love her to death. I wouldn't trade her for $1 gazillion. But other than that, people are like, well, you know, what color eyes do you think she's going to have? I don't know, and I don't care. How do you think her hair's going to look? I don't know. What do you think her skin's going to look? I don't know. I don't care. You know, what do you think she's? Will she be in the Barbies or, you know, all that stuff? I don't know, and I really didn't care, because in my mind, I thought when you put so much expectations on your child and then they don't turn out to be that way, that's reflected, and it comes out in some way or another. So I really don't have any as far as whatever's innate about them.
Yeah.
I can't change it anyway. I just hope, you know, my job is just to raise her to be a productive citizen in the world and be a good person. But as far as those other things, I don't know. I don't care. You know, and even about, we had actually a debate with another gay couple friends of ours. Do you think she's going to be a lesbian or not? I don't know, and I don't care. I'm fine either way. And they said they wanted their child to be straight, which was interesting to us. But we didn't have those kind of.
Why do they want their child to be straight, particularly?
Yeah, they
I mean, I get. I don't know. I don't care. I will always love my child.
Yeah,
I get.
Yeah,
I don't get much beyond.
Yeah,
that.
and as a gay couple, they want their son to be straight because they think it's going to be easier for him. And I just have never had that. You know, when Rosie O'Donnell said the same thing, we talked about it on the show, and I was like, I really didn't like that answer. But you know, that's her opinion. You know, but I'm not like that. I'm totally 100% okay if Gabrielle turns out to be a lesbian. I'm totally 100% okay if she turns out to be straight. Doesn't matter to me. I don't have an expectation or preference either way.
And as you're saying that, it reminds me of something that I learned in school under Dr. Gary Landreth, who is one of the founding people of play therapy. He's absolutely brilliant. He's retired now, but at the University of North Texas. One thing that he would say is when children come into our play therapy room, that we want to greet them with expectancy, but no expectations. And that is something that we also want to give that message to parents to do with their children. And I think that's a beautiful example of you being excited and expecting, but not having an expectation for your child.
Right. And we didn't.
Because honestly, the world will have enough expectations of your child. Teachers, you know, as your child grows up, there's going to be a lot of expectations. The workforce.
Yes.
And that's really not your major role as a parent. Your major role as a parent is to support your child, to be with them, to be with him or her.
Right. And we were talking a little bit about accepting. Now, you had one experience in your class, Lerone, where somebody was very accepting of you. Because I asked before the show, I wanted to know, okay, well, were there other gay couples in the class? And how did the straight couples who were there, how were they reacting
to us? And so far, no one has batted an eyelash or made any comments. I think and that's not to say everybody's totally okay with it. They just probably know better not to say anything. But after the first class, this really sweet lady came up to Danny and I, and she grabbed my arm, squeezed it. She just said, "I think that is so great what you all are doing." And I know it was a benevolent comment. She didn't mean any harm by it. But I said, okay, thank you. And we went on. Well, Danny was annoyed by it. because his response was, well, I can't say exactly the word, but he said, and he's right, which was, we're doing the same thing she's doing. Why is it we're so great what we're doing? Well, you know, why are we singled out?
Right.
You know, so that's about the only comment we've gotten.
Okay, so here's what worries me then. Is when you have couples who aren't like that, you get a foster kid into your home, it probably would not be a child that you're going to adopt, but what if you're not, and I hate that word accepting, because accepting means it's okay for me to accept you.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually better than you are.
I'm in a position of power. You're under me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's really, but if you're not accepting, what happens to that gay kid who ends up in the home that's not accepting?
Then they absolutely get the message of it's not okay to be who you are.
Right.
And what happens to that kid?
Nothing good. If they are taking in the message that it's not okay to be who I am, they will try to cover who they are with lots of things: drugs, alcohol, promiscuity. They will find other ways to fix themselves because they will feel broken.
You know, one kid he's not a kid, he's an adult now. He went through the foster system and basically dropped out of the foster system because it just didn't work for him. He went through a number of homes where he wasn't accepted. One of the things that, and this was just one story that just stuck with me because I think it was so horrible, when it was vacation time for the foster family that he was living with, they put him in a respite home for those 2 weeks that they were on vacation. All the other kids in the family got to go on vacation. He didn't get to go. He said he felt like he was a dog being put in a kennel.
Wow.
So don't do that, Lerone.
Yeah, the psychological impact of that will be lifelong.
Oh,
Yeah.
He's an adult now. He's like 27, 28. I mean, that's what sticks out in his memory of being a foster kid.
Well, you know, if something like that, well, something has happened like that over in England. Not only were the foster parents, they had a child who I think it was only like 11 or 12, just happened to be gay. They were really religious, didn't like it. Not only was that child removed, the foster parents were fined and had their license removed. You know, that's. I thought that was a good idea, but I don't know if anything would ever happen like that over here in the States.
I doubt it.
So
I doubt it.
But
you know, how do you even help cure that kid of that kind of damage that they're receiving?
Yeah, it's tough because it's related to the thing I was talking about earlier, which is that attachment that we have, where it's like the world isn't safe, the world isn't good. And so the way that you help that child is me as the counselor, or you as the parent, ideally you as the parent, right? But if you need my support, then as the counselor, I build that trusting relationship with the child. And then I tell you what things work with this child, because every child's different. And I tell you what works with this child, and then you can build your relationship with the child. So you are now the attachment figure. And that's how you fix it. That's how you make it better.
That's for somebody who wants to do that, but when somebody is completely unaccepting,
right,
you're not going to change that adult.
Absolutely.
So that kid ends up bouncing from foster home to foster home until...
And getting the same message over and over again, which is, I'm not lovable, I'm not okay the way I am.
That would be a bad thing. Have any of your classes addressed those kinds of things?
Not yet.
And so you're going to bring them up?
I probably will now, because they do encourage questions.
But seriously, you have so many parents who never thought of these things before. Now, it's not a matter of them being bad people or generally unaccepting people, but most people just have these general expectations. Well, I'm going to get a kid, you know, when I get him, he's 7, but if we have him for 10 years, you know, he'll start dating girls, and that's just the way it is. And they just never thought of these things before.
But I guess let me take that back. In some form, we have talked about that, not specifically when it comes to sexual orientation. Child is not basically what we thought it would be. We have most definitely talked about these childs are coming from broken homes. They might have physical issues. They may have been sexually abused, physically abused, mentally abused, neglected. We have talked about that these children that you're going to get are not going to come to you packaged in these perfect little beings. They're going to have issues.
They're going to be broken.
They're going to be broken, exactly. So yeah, we've talked about it in that form, yeah.
Yeah, and as we were talking about earlier before the show, those children that come to you, or the child that comes to you with all of those needs, how that will impact your relationship with the child you already have. Because all of a sudden, Daddy is spending more time with and giving more attention to this child who has more needs.
Right.
We need to take a break. We're talking to Gretchen Manus. She's a counselor with a specialty in play therapy. And Lerone Landis, our co-host, is thinking of... well, he's partially insane, but he's...
We're thinking about expanding our family.
Those were the words I was looking for. Thank you. And we'll be back with more Lambda Weekly right after this.
KNON thanks you for your pledge to our recent pledge drive. Now is the time to make your pledge count. Be sure to send it in to KNON 5353 Maple Avenue, Dallas, Texas 75235. If you missed our pledge drive, you can still support community radio by donating online at knon.org. Your pledge only counts if you pay it. KNON 5353 Maple Avenue, Dallas, Texas 75235. Be sure to include the name of the show you're supporting. For questions about the pledge drive, 214-828-9500, extension 234.
This is Raphael McDonald from Resource Center Dallas. You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 KNON FM.
And welcome back to Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet, and I'm here in the studio with Lerone Landis. Am I coming through on your mics?
You are.
Because I'm not on mine. Okay.
You sound fabulous.
Okay, well, as long as I sound fabulous. I'm Dave Taffet. I'm here in the studio with Lerone Landis, and Gretchen Maness is our guest. She's a counselor. Lerone, you were just asking off mic, and ask again. Yeah.
It's just talking about, I guess, the perception about when you see other children. And what I mean by it is out in public and their disciplinary problems in regards to the parents. You know, my daughter, she's a typical 4-year-old. For the most part, she's a really well-behaved child, but just like any other child, she has her moments when she's going to break down and have a meltdown also. But for the most part, especially when we're out in public, you know, we keep Gabrielle on a tight rein. But, you know, sometimes we're out in restaurants, we see kids literally just running around. Parents are on one side of the restaurant, the kids are running amok on the other side of the restaurant, in the mall. And sometimes, it's hard not to judge. Like, what are these parents doing? I don't know. What are your thoughts about that? And sometimes, did you say something?
Well, I definitely have been there.
We all have
the same experience. Yeah. And I think that what you're seeing is a clear disconnection between parents and children. And the children are finding a way to get attention. Like we were talking about earlier, behavior has a purpose. And so when they're doing those behaviors, it's purposeful. They're trying to get their parents' attention. And so the parent is not helping the situation by ignoring it. And again, going back to the corporal punishment thing, I don't think that is necessarily the answer either. I think that there's something definitely in between those.
But I was going to say, is there a connection between some parents that are so afraid to discipline their children, particularly with corporal punishment, that they just think, well, we'll just ignore it and it'll go away?
Yes, I think that's true. I think that, I think for the most part, if parents don't know how to discipline, they've tried different things and they haven't worked, then they kind of do give up at one point. And I think what we're seeing is a result of them just giving up and just saying, my child's out of control, can't help them.
Yeah. Okay, I have a perfect example of, I was in a restaurant, the table behind me, they're just ignoring their kid, like maybe 4 years old, kids just running around and bumping into our table and pulling things off of our table. So finally, I decided to just talk to the kid when he came over to our table, and I said, and we're just talking a little bit, what's your name? And I said, you're really not as much of a brat as you're appearing, are you? It's just
I can totally see David doing
your parents just have no idea how to, how to even talk to you, right?
Absolutely.
And that's really...
That's what they're wanting.
And that's it, David, really.
That's what they're needing.
And finally, the kid's running around the restaurant more, and I just turned around and I said, I think your little brat just ran out the front door.
Yeah, I mean...
And he did. I mean, nice. There's a parking lot out there. If you're going to let your 4-year-old run into the parking lot, I was ready to call CPS on him. I mean,
and this is probably a topic for a whole nother day because we could talk a lot about this. But this idea of parents just giving their children an iPod or whatever it is, some electronic gadget to keep them busy, or letting them run around to keep them busy. All of those things are disconnecting parents and children. And what children are wanting is to be connected.
I agree.
So what video games and other electronic equipment does Gabrielle have?
You know what? 0.
Huh.
Believe it or not, I do
believe it. Actually,
when she was first, I guess like 1 or 2, one of our friends got her what is it called, leapfrog, a leapfrog reader, and it's very limited. It was just teaching her letters. Well, she doesn't even use that anymore. But no, we spent a lot of time reading.
I was just going to say, do you know one thing that they do is they read to her?
We read
old-fashioned books.
Old-fashioned books.
That
hard
turn
books.
the pages.
Yes. And David has supplied a good amount of them. Thank you, David. So that's what we do. And we have a chalkboard that she likes to draw and color on, but no electronic gadgets yet. But I mean, eventually I'm going to have to get her one. That's the way of the world.
And why this could be a whole topic on its own is because what I'm seeing in private practice is so many more kids with this attention deficit disorder diagnosis. And I think that our use of electronic gadgets is contributing to that because it's keeping kids' brains constantly stimulated.
Yeah.
And it's a different kind of stimulation than holding a piece of chalk and writing on a chalkboard. That's a healthy kind of stimulation. But overly stimulating the brain, I think, is contributing to all of the diagnoses that I see of kids with ADD, ADHD.
Right.
And I was going to ask, why do you think all of a sudden there's so much, like you can go into a public school class and half the kids are on drugs? That didn't happen years ago.
I think it has so much to do with the use of electronics and the disconnection from conversation, from sitting at a table with the family. Thanksgiving was just the other day. How many kids were sitting at the table talking?
Right.
And how many kids were on electronic devices?
Right.
That's what's missing, and I see that more and more frequently with my
at our Thanksgiving dinner, the kids were just at the table with us, and we were just talking, and afterwards a few of us played a tile card game. Nothing electronic at all. We just sat and talked for the afternoon. It was a lovely afternoon. And the kids enjoyed it too. I mean, the kids weren't, after a while, after like 2 hours of playing this one game, enough was enough. But
unfortunately, that's becoming more and more rare.
Of course it is. Okay, so once they go through their parenting class, because we're coming up toward the end of the show, once they go through their parenting class, what steps should they do for Gabrielle to be in the best position to be there with accepting a new kid? It's going to be different no matter how much you prepare her. It'll be different once the kid's in the house. You know that. But to prepare each other also for having another kid. Because 2 kids are twice as much work as one.
Yes. You're right.
Well, I think in both of those cases, in your relationship with your partner, as well as your relationship with Gabrielle, what you want to do is you want to give her you want to convey these 4 messages. And Dr. Gary Landreth, who I've spoke of earlier in the show, he was one of the founders of Play Therapy, and he says that the 4 most important messages that we give to children are this: I hear you, I understand, I care, and I'm here. I hear you, I'm here, I understand, and I care. And those are the messages that you want to relay to Gabrielle and to your partner.
Yeah.
That I'm with you on this, and I understand what you're feeling. It's valid.
Okay. Now, the fact that Gabrielle was such an easy kid, like for the first year, there was nothing wrong. I remember the first time something was wrong. She was more than a year old, and she never had the earaches and the up all night. She never had any of that. She was like perfect baby. And all of a sudden,
the earaches they did come.
Yeah. But she didn't have that at first.
No,
you were in a total panic the first time that happened because it wasn't. He had the perfect baby. Okay, so this new child is coming in with baggage. First of all, is there counseling available for that child through the foster system?
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, they have, I don't know if it's lifetime, but definitely up until the age of 18, it's available for them.
Okay, so So that's something that you'd recommend, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I would recommend counseling. There are advocacy centers that will see children free. They will see you, once you're a client with them, you're a client for life. So you can go back in adulthood at any point that you need their services. So I would say counseling is a big piece.
Okay, so that's a big piece to help the child. And let's go from the child's point of view that's coming into the house. To help the child do what?
To help them really cope with a new environment, because it's not what they're used to. And to really cope with the things that they probably have pushed aside and weren't able to cope with while they were happening. And so now that they're in a safe place, now is the time that they can really deal with that old stuff as children, so that as they get older, they can progress and they don't get stuck psychologically.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask the bad question. I have one set of friends that they adopted a child. That the child was specifically placed in their house because the two kids that were like 4 and 5 at the time, 2 boys, their mother beat them so severely that they were afraid of women, and so CPS was specifically looking for a gay household to put them in because these kids were so petrified of women. And they went to counseling and, of course, overcame that. But that wasn't what would be safe for them. This child might be a child that comes from a home where he wasn't exposed to having 2 dads. Any advice for how they should deal with this kid in their house? Not that I really think 2 dads are doing anything in front of Gabrielle that's inappropriate, but what advice do you have to the 2 dads as opposed to a regular straight couple that's what he was used to before?
I would say go back to that honesty thing. It seems like you've never seen this before. This seems different. And you're opening the child up to all these new ideas. Yeah.
The age range that we're looking for, again, 2 to 5, I don't know. I don't even know if they would. Of course, they would notice a difference, but I don't know if they would notice a difference enough to even compute what's going on. These 2 men are an actual couple. I don't know. We'll have to play it by ear, but I am prepared to tell them, similar to the way we told our nephews when they were growing up. I just say, most guys fall in love with a girl, and most girls fall in love with a guy. But sometimes 2 guys fall in love with each other, and sometimes 2 girls fall in love with each other. That's exactly how I would explain it. Don't need to go into a lot of great detail.
Okay, so in your family, have you had those same sort of questions about you being an interracial couple?
Never come up.
Huh.
Our families are so mixed. I think most people most people in our family have a partner or husband or wife, whatever, of someone of a different race.
Okay.
Yeah, that's never come up.
Huh. But again, that could come up.
Could.
With a foster child that is being placed in a multiracial family.
Right.
And it wasn't like that before. Now, I think most kids don't see race. That's something they're taught to see. But if part of the abuse, I don't want to stereotype, but people who abuse can tend to be racist. They can tend to be anti-this, anti-everything. Am I going overboard with that? Or?
No, that's actually pretty accurate.
Okay, so there could be those kinds of problems, too, that you've never dealt with before.
Right.
What advice do you have on that?
My advice is just be honest.
Oh, yeah.
Honest and concise. Use as few words as possible to convey your message, but your relationship is the most important thing.
So you give the kid a hug is the best way to start.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so after doing this, I know you went to classes, Lerone, and the classes are not there to discourage you, although
they're not.
In a way, they are.
In a roundabout way, you're right. They kind of are. They really want to
weed out
the ones who are just kind of on the fence. They want people who are serious after they've learned everything. They're still serious, and this isn't going to be just a big bed of roses necessarily.
Yeah, and they know from talking to the people at Jonathan's place. I know they encourage people to come to their classes if
they do.
if you're thinking about it, and they know if they have 10 couples to start, that 2 or 3 of those couples are going to be weeded out, and their attitude toward that is, that's just fine.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
How thoughtful of you. And if this isn't right for you, you're doing the right thing by not fostering.
Yes.
Right?
Because unfortunately, even those who make it all the way through the classes and become certified and become foster parents, some of those end up being really bad parents. I mean, some foster parents get in trouble with the law.
Well, that's what I'm saying with these girls who are back in this facility, because again, after being abused and sexually abused and all this drug abuse, in their foster home, the same thing happened.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, and one thing that I tend to see a lot is once a child is abused one time, they tend to be repeatedly abused in different situations. It's like they're vulnerable to that abuse. So when they go from one foster home to another, the chance that they'll be abused again is fairly high if they've already been abused.
why is that?
I think it's just a vulnerability, keeping everything secret. Not talking about the abuse.
You would think those were kids that would have a CASA worker attached to them, and that CASA worker would go out of their way to find the safest home possible for that kid.
Absolutely, that would make sense, but that's not always
what
happens.
happens, because there's like one CASA worker for every 4 kids that actually needs one, and that's another whole topic that we don't even have time to talk about on the show today. Okay, so any other questions that you have? Because the purpose of this was to try to discourage you completely from this nonsense of having more kids. Now that Gabrielle is old enough to move out on her own.
Oh, yeah. We're taking her for an interview for a job next week. No, I really don't. I mean, I'm sure more questions will come as we go through the process, but the classes have done a pretty good job of opening up your eyes to things that you probably haven't thought of before.
Yeah. And I think that's probably very true, because your kid hasn't been abused. Your kid hasn't been, there's no reason for your kid to be in the foster system.
Right.
I mean, and that's dealing with something completely different than you've ever dealt with before. So it's a huge... I admire anybody who can take in a foster kid. I really do. I hate to say this with Lerone listening, but I really do admire somebody who actually can do this, because if you thought being a parent was a full-time job, being a foster parent is fuller.
I will say, compared to, the different ways that LGBT folks become parents, having a surrogacy has been much easier. Going through surrogacy has been much easier than going through the foster. I mean, it is incredibly invasive. I mean, they check you out from head to toe. They go through your house basically with a white glove on. I mean, it's incredibly invasive. So if you're, and I mean, it's needed. It's needed. Totally understand why. So if you're thinking about being a foster parent, you got to be prepared to totally open up your world.
Yeah. And that's another way that they weed people out.
It is another way they weed people out, absolutely.
Because if you have anything to hide, they'll find it.
They are going to find it.
And hopefully they'll find it and weed people out that way.
Absolutely.
Well, that takes us to the end of our show today. I hope, did you have a nice Hanukkah?
I did.
Well, I'm glad you did.
I did.
Gretchen, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much,
Thank you guys
Gretchen.
for having me.
Once he actually does become a foster parent...
Seriously, come back.
I will come back.
And we'll talk about all the messes he's gotten himself into.
That sounds good.
For all of us here at Lambda Weekly, the late Patti Fink will be back with us toward the end of next week's show. And for all of us here at KNON, I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving, happy Hanukkah. I hope you got trampled on Black Friday or got all the crap that you needed to buy.
Stay home.
Doc is busy talking, and he's saying we should just continue. Oh, we should stretch. Okay, one more minute. How about our theme song, our end theme song, so that we can get going? No, because they're setting up for their show and haven't connected.
Welcome to community radio.
Oh, yeah. Well, we will go another...
There we are. We're playing.
See you next week.
We'll see you next week.
KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.